Sanjida O'Connell is a wildlife expert and author. In her novels, she's taken inspiration from the most extreme and beautiful of landscapes, from Cork in the Republic of Ireland to Outer Mongolia. Today, she's a little closer to home, walking in the footsteps of our forebears along the backbone of Berkshire.
Snaking along Berkshire's northern boundary winds an ancient highway, thought to be the oldest road in Britain. This prehistoric track flows along high chalk ridges. This is a land that's steeped in myth and strewn with memories of our earliest ancestors.
As an author myself, I find places like this really stir the imagination. And today I'm on a journey of discovery along the Ridgeway to find out why this path and this stunning landscape have influenced a generation of storytellers, including one of our best-loved authors.
The Ridgeway today is one of Britain's national trails, stretching for 87 miles from Overton Hill in Wiltshire to Ivinghoe Beacon in Buckinghamshire. On the slopes above Uffington on the Oxford-Berkshire border, I'm meeting Jeff Goddard from the Friends of the Ridgeway.
It was a trade route, it was communication between tribes, it was probably used to bring flints from Grimes graves in Norfolk to Stonehenge and Avebury.
And people still walk this route today, don't they? But for pleasure now.
Indeed they do. Probably 250,000 people at least come up here and use it. Some of them are long-distance walkers. Some of them just come up to be quiet and to enjoy the countryside. It's a very atmospheric route. You can feel the centuries unrolling. There's always something to inspire you here.
The landscape of the Ridgeway has fascinated those who come here for millennia. My fellow author, David England, is drawn to this ancient folklore. We've stepped off the path to find some perspective on what makes this setting so special.
So David, you and I are both storytellers, and I know that I'm certainly inspired by a sense of place. But I wondered why you think that storytellers have been inspired by this landscape.
I think this is a mythic landscape, and in many ways the landscape creates the stories. There are some specific features, particularly around here, extraordinary undulations, great gouges and little inexplicable mounds, and just the sheer beauty of the place.
And how do you think all those tellers of tales connect with the Ridgeway?
This is a major trade route. So people are travelling up and down. They're meeting one another. They're gathering around campfires and in cold harbours. And what do? They tell stories. And where the stories come from? They come from their observations of the landscape and what the landscape means.
And it wasn't only our ancient ancestors who were inspired walking this path. Author J.R.R. Tolkien visited Wayland's Smithy, a Neolithic burial mound or barrow just off the Ridgeway, which may have been the inspiration for the Barrow Downlands in The Lord of the Rings.
They heard of the great barrows and the green mounds and the stone rings upon the hills and in the hollows among the hills. Sheep were bleating in flocks. Green walls and white walls rose. There were fortresses on the heights.
It was this ancient pathway itself, though, that made a powerful impression on another one of our favourite authors, who also made this county his home.
Kenneth Grahame is most famous for that children's classic, The Wind in the Willows, said to be inspired by the sights and sounds of his childhood home of Cookham Dean in East Berkshire.
But in one of his earliest published works, an essay entitled The Romance of the Road, Grahame extols the joys of walking the Ridgeway.
At once it strikes you out and away from the habitable world, in a splendid, purposeful manner. Running along the highest ridge of the Downs, a broad green ribbon of turf, a road of promises, of hinted surprises, following each other with the inevitable sequence in a melody.
Margaret Bulliment is a Kenneth Grahame enthusiast and a fellow traveller on the Ridgeway today.
So Margaret, Kenneth Grahame's well known for his association with Cookham over to the east, but he was actually passionate about the Berkshire Downs and the Ridgeway in particular, wasn't he?
Yes, he absolutely loved this landscape. 30 years of his life he was at the Bank of England, but he would come away for weekends and walk the Ridgeway, and it was escape for him. There was an American publisher, and he described Kenneth as a man not happy beneath a roof. When this publisher visited, they would sit after dinner for an hour in complete silence, and then they'd go outside, and Kenneth Grahame would not stop talking. They would be up on the Ridgeway, walking along. He was an entirely different person outside, and this was his landscape.
What do you think it was about the road that appealed to him?
It's ancient history. He's walking in the steps of King Alfred, and even thousands of years before that of the traders that used to come along this route. All of these things that happened centuries ago, his footsteps were going to be part of that history. And it was this continuance. This landscape always drew him back. This was his world.
The Ridgeway's unfolding story casts a powerful spell over the imagination. There's no doubt it will captivate the traveller and the teller of tales alike for many years to come.